Welcome back, everybody. We are about to begin panel 3. Here to present panel 3, which, by the way, happens to be on healing, is a very special person, Jackie Ortiz. She's a passionate advocate for mental health, and following the loss of a very dear friend in 2022, founded Susie's House of Healing, which is a not-for-profit, so she took it to the next level. So please join me in welcoming Jackie Ortiz as she introduces the panel on healing, most appropriate for her.
Thank you. So panel 3, the healing arts. Today you'll hear about how trauma impacts not only our service members, but families and our communities, and how can we use the arts to help us heal. Our facilitator is retired Colonel Anne Marie Halterman. She is an innovative and insightful professional with a distinguished career spanning military, corporate, and nonprofit sectors. She currently serves as the co-founder and executive director of Uniting US, a nonprofit that inspires and empowers veterans and their families through therapeutic arts. Starting with our panelist is Lila Hertzberg, a founder and executive director of Lifeline Horse Rescue and Lifeline Equine Therapy Services, called the LETS program, which offers subsidized alternative mental health and wellness services to veterans and military community. Our next panelist is Dr. Gail Kelsey. She is a clinical psychologist from Brooklyn, New York. She was a part of the New York City 9/11 recovery. She's worked as a staff psychologist for the CIA, and since retiring, has managed a thriving solo practice with primary focus on treatment of anxiety disorders, OCD, and PTSD. Our next panelist is Army Sergeant Luis Rosa Valentin, who has always had an inclination for the arts, actually studied art therapy in college. But while on his second deployment in Iraq in 2008, suffered from an ED explosion and became a triple amputee. He was airlifted to Germany and then spent the next year and a half at Walter Reed Medical Center recovering. Our next panelist is Therese Schlachter. She is the author. She is the author of Finding Ways: A Warrior's Journey Towards Peace and Purpose, a creative nonfiction which tells the story of Colonel Gregory Gradson's catastrophic wounding recovery and path to becoming a motivational speaker, and then which also leads him to the 2008 Super Bowl. She is currently the chief storyteller at Ridgeback as well. So with that, go ahead.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jackie, for that wonderful invite. And I have to say, the John P. Mayhew Foundation, we handed out cards, Mary Lou, and it was more because thank you for sharing hope and bringing everyone together so that we can have these conversations. And our panel is going to be a little bit different than the others because, well, I'm different, so unfortunately they get the tag with me. But actually, if you have questions, if you want to be part of the conversation, please join us, because as we move through this time, what you have thoughts or share with us might be pertinent at that time, and then at the end you'll be like, well, I don't want to keep everyone from getting a beverage and a break. And then you won't ask the question or interject and give us information that would be helpful. So please feel free to participate in the discussion. I feel a little bit overwhelmed having the panel members that are on this panel. I'm a little bit nervous because I don't know if you know, but every one of these people that are up here have won many awards. And so any moment that I'm talking, I'm depriving the audience of brilliance. So I'm going to do very little talking. But let me just tell you, our goal today is, and actually, at the fireside chat, it was also discussed, is how military and veteran issues are not specific to the military and veteran community, that they apply to everyone. And so between a professional writer, a psychologist that has done VA work, but also private practice CIA, we won't talk about CIA, Layla, who has and is currently getting another degree. By the way, I didn't realize that, but I can't wait for you to have that finished, so that's one less thing on your plate. But being in the equine therapy and horse rescue side, so her reality is much different than mine. I fear those beasts, but actually an engagement at her farm helped me realize that I can understand they're so majestic and why they're helpful for people. And then Louise, and I'm going to tell you, I have pictures of Louise painting this large-scale mural, which is about the size of the John P. Mayhew banner there. And how many days did you lay on the floor, sit in the chair? It was a grueling challenge.
It was. And when we kept it, there's steps and there's all sorts of things. But I mean, there's no stopping me.
Right. And not only did you do that, but other people that are here and on the panel participated as well. And so about 500 people have touched this and the other corresponding mural that goes with it on that 3-4 day event back in 2024. And so we wanted to share this with you today and realize that we are working towards having a discussion about, we all have our individual areas that we work in, but how we can come together and hopefully have some innovative ideas and solutions that can bring help and services to more people and also help the organizations reach a greater population and also have the funding and resources that they need. So I'm going to start with you, Therese, because you're right here next to me. So this is the thing that I find very interesting. So you worked with Greg Gadsden and you did this book. But there's so much more. How many years did you work with him?
I met Greg right after he was wounded in September of 2007, and 16 years later the book came out.
16 years.
Yes.
So from a non-military background position, but you worked with the DoD, right? And
Right.
you
I was a contractor.
right. But in that 16 years with him and being the author and traveling with him and being at different events, what are your conclusions about resilience, wellness? You know, what as the author of the book, but also as an individual that has watched Greg and his family through this process as well?
Greg had a very good and stable family, and very, very supportive. And I think that was very, very key in his recovery. He also had a lot of faith and a lot of spirit, and I think that was very instrumental in his recovery. The 16-year process, it evolved because when we first started, I was a producer at what was then known as the Pentagon Channel, and I met him at Walter Reed as I was covering Wounded there. And we got to know each other, and then, I don't know if you know the story, he was recovering and wound up becoming a motivational coach, most notably to the New York Giants when they beat the Patriots in the Super Bowl in 2008. So that's the gist of the story. And so when we were friends, when that happened, I'm like, we gotta write this down. Come on. You go to Iraq, you lose your legs, you come home, you become a coach, you coach an NFL team to victory. Are you kidding me? And they weren't supposed to win that game. The Giants weren't supposed to win that game. It was the Patriots. So, but then when I had to really talk him into doing it. He's very humble, and so when we started, but one-word answers. I would ask him questions, and I would get these 1 or 2 word answers. I'm like, this is going to be a long time. This is going to be really hard. But then as he evolved and he recovered and he gained so much perspective about his life and his family. Initially he didn't think that he would be able to do things with his family. And then he would go on Wounded Warrior trips or, other organization trips with his family, realize that he could horseback ride and go take his son fishing and do things like that. And so there were so many things involved in his recovery, and he was a resilient person, I think, to begin with because of his football career and the way he was raised. But and all of those elements, I think, came together to help him through. I mean, when he was wounded, I don't know if you know anything about the West Point community, but it's a freaking mafia, man. Those people show up. They came from all over to support him, and still do. We went on a book tour. We were all over the country for about a year, and the West Pointers, man, they came out of the woodwork. They would just always show up and always support, and they would, even create their own events, for us. So he had that. He had a lot of. Did that answer the question?
Well, my question is what it was like for you.
What it was like for me.
That's my question.
Okay, it was very humbling because I got to hang out with this incredible person, and so much of the time I had the same question, like, what makes you like this? How can you be so strong? And I was just always sort of studying him for that, and it really a lot of it boiled down to his faith, and so I learned from that. I learned probably more humility. He's a great photographer. He took this picture of himself. This is a self-portrait, and we would go to lunch, and he always had a camera around his neck, and we were at lunch one day, and he pulls it out and he sticks it right up in my face, and I'm all, dude, my wrinkles. And he said, do my legs define me? And I said, no. And he said, your wrinkles don't define you. And that was, I always chuckle when I tell that story. And that was, just one of the lessons. Just one of the lessons. I had a disappointment one time, and I just sent him a text and said, what do I do? And he said, you can choose to go into the darkness, or you can choose to be the light. And so we need to choose to be the light.
Which is why you're here.
Which is, yeah.
Part of why you're here.
I don't want to, would never call myself the light, but, we try.
We're part of it.
Try. Yeah. Is that?
That helps.
Okay.
So Gail, as a mental health professional, and you hear Teresa's experience, right? And this concept of what defines us and what doesn't. And the thought that she started working with the veteran, we'll just call him the veteran, because any veteran that had significant disabilities, and they one or two word answers, and Luis, you're gonna get to talk about this too, what is standard, right? But then as they start to tell their story and someone listens to it, I mean, you do that very, very well through the mental health care that you provide. What does that look like as a family and an individual moving through that process and their family, and what you see the value is for the community beyond just that individual and their family as they're getting the care that they need?
I don't see a lot of families in my work, but I could imagine that when somebody loses a part of their identity, that the family loses as well. And so it's about regaining their identity and integrating back into the family as a different self, but at the same time the same. When I talk about resilience with my patients, the goal is not necessarily resilience. Resilience is more, here's our baseline, and then we have a hit. We go down to the lower level, and then we come up, and that's resilience back to the baseline. I really look for post-traumatic growth in my patients, which is actually surpassing the original baseline. How can we actually become even better than we were before we experienced a trauma? And so it really, doing that work would benefit the individual as well as the family, getting to the post-traumatic growth phase.
Right. And so when we look at, like Louis, you and your family have participated in a lot of different types of activities. How does that look to you from the military side? But I know you interact with non-military people as well. And that telling the stories, how many people have told you a story after you share your story? Is it something that happens regularly, and how does that?
It's something that happens almost immediately, and it's something that happens very naturally between people, and between people in our situation, because it's really big to get out and do these events. You feel that the rest of your life, when you have an injury as traumatic or as severe as mine, you think you're going to spend the rest of your life in a bed somewhere. Those are your first thoughts. It's like, now what am I going to do? Nothing. I'm going to have to be taken care of. But then being taken out to these events where you put yourself in more precarious positions, where you have a chance to be a little stronger, to grow a little more. And when you take those steps, you realize that, okay, things are different, but not in the same manner that I thought they were going to be. They're different, but they're accessible. It's possible to go fishing again. It's possible to horseback ride, to get in a car, to anything. I mean,
Or to gas your car up at a gas station yourself.
yes, actually, that was actually pretty difficult, because you're supposed to be able to honk, and someone's supposed to come out, supposed to. The way things are supposed to happen. It never happens that way. So eventually I just started, I worked my way around it, and I no longer use a ramp van, because then the ramp gets in the way. So I just go out like a station wagon or SUV type. I just go out the back, I get my gas, and I just love seeing the gas attendant's face, like, oh, maybe I could have helped. It's like, no, he wasn't going to help.
And by that time, you're already
He wasn't
driving
gonna
down the
help.
road.
Yeah,
right?
I'm just going to skip that part where I'm honking like an idiot in the middle of your parking lot, and you're pretending like you can't hear me. So
Yeah.
Unless you're in Jersey.
yeah, unless you're in Jersey, that's right, where they're not allowed to pump.
And so when we look at I like the concept of the below and back above to resilient. It's through the work that you've done and the activities that you've engaged in that you become an inspiration to so many people. And so your participation in this is wonderful. And then when you meet someone like Layla, who has the equine therapy, which is something you haven't done, maybe you'll end up at her horse ranch.
Yeah.
And Layla, what would you say about what you see when different people come in the door and meeting them where they're at, and what that process looks like?
Right.
Much like Gail
Right,
described.
right. So it depends on who's there, right? So literally, it is meeting them where they're at. So we work with mostly military veterans and their families, but we have some people outside of that population as well, and they have different needs. So our most typical client is someone with very, very high anxiety from PTSD, moral injury, military sexual trauma, and they're really on edge. So just even getting out of the house, coming to the farm, coming to people they don't know, is really frightening. So we can start with them at that very high level of trauma. And honestly, what happens is it's the whole experience of first just being out in nature. Okay, we don't have four walls around us. We can breathe, we can feel the air, see and touch the horses, and get grounded. So that's really honestly the very first thing they just need. We have groups that come out from Walter Reed, and every time they come, we say, what would you like to work on today? We just want to be here. So we work on grounding, we breathe, we work on mindfulness. They just need to be here in this safe space, put their worries behind. We'll deal with that in a bit because we know we have to. But right now, my body, my mind just needs to be here. And so I love the PTS growth, right? Growth through trauma, because we see that too. And depending on the person, it takes a different amount of time. But we see people who, for instance, someone who got shot and had a horrible injury, thought he was going to die, had horrible PTSD, lost his family, lost his job because the Marine was coming out and doing all these things. And eventually that person learned to regulate. Self-regulation is a huge tool. that veterans and others need. It's not just veterans, it could be children or other adults, people with addictions. We need to self-regulate so that we can be in society, right, and not be isolated, not lose our family. And the particular person that I was mentioning has recovered very well and has a job now helping other veterans as a spokesman. But there's no way that person could have done that without this healing process. And really, I feel that they've become I hate to say a better person, but a more self-informed person who's had a lot of growth. And without that trauma, that might not have happened, right?
Like finding meaning and purpose that redefines, I think maybe Gail, you're the one that has said that before, to define the future. Was it you or Trace? Maybe one of you said it, about having the ability the mindfulness, and to say, okay, this is what my past is or was, and this is what I want the future to be.
We were talking about manifestation.
Manifestation.
Which sounds hokey, but there really is something to it. Writing things down, talking about it, thinking about it, meditating on it, and really thinking about setting your goals and making that happen.
So when I saw the bag of goodies that Mary Lou gave people, it had a journaling, daily journal booklet in it. I don't have it up here with me. But you look at that, and I mean, all of us, although we come from different backgrounds, our programs are slightly different. We probably all look at that and go, "Oh, I have something to write in," and luckily we have pens that work today because of Mary Lou, and I don't know that your team realizes, but we did cop some pens from the back counter, so we could write notes up here.
VA pens here.
Oh yeah, very good, very good. They're excellent pens, by the way. And so as we talk about, okay, so we're halfway through this process of this discussion, right? So what we do individually, how do we move forward in a way that allows more people to have that experiential engagement that helps them realize that they may have a place that's comfortable and safe for them, that maybe isn't defined by whether they were military or not, or whether they're international, from another country, or they're US born. How do we do that as individual entities and people so that we can maximize the resource investment and have the greatest impact that we can, not only on the adult or the adult family members, but also the children, and what they're exposed to now, and how that's going to shape their future and make them stronger and our future leaders. So that's my question for all four of you.
So I have some thoughts on that. So for one thing, we reach out for populations. So during the whole, from the beginning of the Ukraine war, the war on Ukraine, I've been very much wanting to help Ukrainian soldiers. So we found a way to connect, right? So it's through meetings like this that we can meet other partners and make connections so that when we need to help somebody, we're able to do it. So meetings like this, Mary Beth, are very, very important. And so in that process, we've been able to work with wounded Ukrainian soldiers, which has been amazing, all right? And then as a result of that, to be honest, I was frightened to work with a very wounded population at first, but having worked with a couple of fellows, I started getting more comfortable. And we do work with wounded soldiers and other service members from Walter Reed on a regular basis. And again, it's meeting them where they're at is one thing. And we work with others as well, okay? So we've had everything from a child on her last days with cancer to adults with cancer. We work with people with substance use disorders or problems. And it is a universal thing, right? That for what we're doing in terms of the healing of nature. And I'm not saying that's going to work for everyone because it's not a one-size-fits-all, but for people who we're working with are seeing a lot of benefit from being in nature. So again, it could be, other populations, other countries, it is the kind of thing that would help. Not everyone has access to horses, so you have to scale it, right? Well, maybe it's a walk in the park, you know. Maybe it's looking at the squirrels, darn little things, you know. Whatever it is, to feel like, you know, you're part of this greater thing, right? And get out of the institutional idea. And maybe, you know, there's a whole other conversation about medications, but I won't start that. Yeah.
Well, and when we look at the path and trajectory of you and your organizations, your book, and your processing, you know, we have these wonderful people that are here today and present, but we also have people that are joining online. And so for those that aren't from this area, Layla and I met several years ago at the symposium, and we've been at each other's events, and I can personally tell you, I know that art and therapeutic engagement in that manner isn't always the solution, but by you being present, there are people that go between our two organizations and find success, whether it's for themselves as individuals or as a family, being out in nature and being on the farm environment. And then, you know, I look at the book, right? Your book, I've read that book, and it's a page turner. Like, it takes time to read a book, but not when it's well written.
Thank you.
And so here's a little antidote. So Therese is here today with us, but she also does things like, hey, I'm having a book club with someone that was at a Uniting Us event, and we're going to read your book. And so Therese is like, that's great. I'll come and meet the book club. She goes to the book club and interacts with a completely foreign community. I mean, you're not from that same location.
No.
And
That's fun. Those are fun. That's a blast.
it's fun, but it's not always possible.
Yeah.
So how do we have these opportunities? And Gail, you help Uniting Us in so many ways and help monitor the environment and provide advice. How can we do it on a bigger scale beyond what we're doing today? Because resources are limited. And when we invest our heart and soul into something, how do we get the impact? How can we make that impact larger, better, for not just veterans and military? You know, I've really asked the audience too, what can we do? What can we change? And especially nonprofit world and funding and grants, that is always hard, but it's even harder in times like this. But I'm confident that we can share hope, that there's a way to do it. But the question is, who can help answer that question? Because as individuals, I can't come up with a solution. But I can tell you, just talking with the panel members before the event and talking to a few people before we, during lunch, it's very clear to me that the answers are here. And so I ask you to think about that and tell us, but also tell me, because I want to do better. I want to do more. And it's at a time when people need hope.
Yeah, on impact. I think it's really, really, really hard to bring people in. You hear about all of this need, and you know about all these organizations, and how you bring them together. There's such a mystery to me. I've had, I belong to a group called the Military Writers Society of America. It sounds very fancy. It is not. And we will come to your school. We did something out at the Reston, the Workhouse Art Center. We had a 6-week-long workshop for writers, any military.
Was that Lorton House?
Yeah, at the workout, yeah. It was a once a week, 2 hours at a time workshop, write your story, it's called. And you show up and you learn, you know, if you want to do poetry, we had to rent a poet to come in and help. But poetry, fiction, nonfiction, young adult, you know, any, and there's a woman named Valerie Ormond. She and I co-taught that. And we offered that, and they kind of advertised it. We had maybe 4 people show up for the entire. I just find it's really, really hard to me to find the population that you want to impact, but you know that they're out there.
And that's why I think if we talk about having an event, let's say, I mean, they do gaming conferences, right? 3-day, 4-day gaming conferences.
Yes.
What if there's an experiential conference where individuals and families can come? They don't have to be military and veteran, but they get to try all these different types of activities.
Yeah.
And really it's wellness and engagement, but it maybe is things that people would never have an opportunity to try themselves, whether it's glass blowing or writing, like taking time and actually trying to write something, hopefully not from a blank piece of paper, because that's really hard.
That's where you got to start, baby.
But how could we do that? And once you get someone to the event, now you give them lots, it's like a smorgasbord, right? You give them lots of choices, but they're there. So you have to take advantage of them being there and give them options.
The Art Center offers they have a veterans section, and they offer classes to veterans and families and spouses, and I think they run into the same thing though. It's really, really tough to get the word out and find the space. The space there is beautiful, but it's in Lorton.
Right.
It's so far away from almost everything except Lorton. So.
I have a thought about that, because I'm looking at some community partners in here, and what we realized, because we were running groups and other events and not getting very many attendees, and for all the effort and all the things you want to share with a good number of people who can then take it back to where they're coming from. So collaboration and partnership with our community partners. And amazingly, they will show up and they will bring a group. And sometimes they have so many people, you can't accommodate all that group. So you're going to have to do 2 or 3. So it really is, in my view, my short experience, is collaborating with community partners, right? That's a great way to get the information out. Bring people in, share art and horses, or books and other things, right? You know, they call forest walks. Art is huge, right? And
But it's scary.
But is it scary? It is scary, but then sometimes I'm sure you make it fun where we're just slapping some things on here and see what we got.
And then amazingly, it turns out like this.
And it turns out, I don't know how that happens. It's like magical.
I was part of this, and that is saying something, because I can't do a stick figure. But together we could do it.
Right, and then I don't want to take too much of the time, but let me just mention this really quick too, is sharing the ideas. So for instance, we've inspired Ukrainians to take equine-assisted therapy back home. We have someone who runs an Indian nonprofit who's interested to see how they could carry that back. Maybe horses, maybe animal assisted, right? But to learn about that, we have someone from Cameroon. So you can make this,
Grow.
British have these programs as well, and we want to share these experiences, and we want to know how they're doing it, right? How are their experiences going, right?
And it comes to benchmarks.
Yeah.
It is so much about networking, like you said, because last night on the phone, you had this brilliant idea. Well, why don't you translate your book? I'm like, why? Who wants to read it outside of this country? And you're like, a lot of people, and we talked about the Ukrainian soldiers. And in fact, Greg's prosthetist has opened up a prosthetics shop, so to speak, in Kyiv. So, there's, what a great audience for that book, and people who could really, really appreciate the story and use the story, as part of their recovery. So that's a great idea, and I would love to do that now. And I'm embarrassed to say that we haven't done an audiobook. We just haven't gotten to it. And it's something that we would have to fund ourselves, but it's not that expensive, and we can do it. and I didn't really think about it making it more accessible to people who are blind. I didn't even think about that population. All I thought about are, commuters. Like, oh, they listen to audiobooks, and I listen to audiobooks when I'm, varnishing or doing something. But right, there's a whole population, and someone said to me a couple weeks ago, I would love to read your book, but I've had a stroke and I can't read anymore. I'm like, oh yeah. So now I'm motivated to do that and to do those two things. And I wouldn't have thought about it without talking with other people about it, because we all live in our bubbles, right?
That's right. Does anyone, or someone has a question? Yes, ma'am.
How much can you leverage in the virtual world so that I'm thinking about the mother who's at home and is tied to young children, and they don't have the mobility, but they would love a break, and you veto a video into the home with a master class that can be taught, and then you could teach them how to set up their environment, an art healing environment, even if it's like a desk that's just their own desk with tools that they can work with. So that's what I'm thinking as you're talking. Back in the day, when I first started, that was a long time ago in the 80s, art therapy was a core part of treatment. It was, especially for the inpatients, that they had to go to so many sessions of art therapy as part of their core treatment before they were discharged. And so with all the cuts, I don't even think that happens anymore. But I think we need to be talking to our legislators about what's the CMS code, how do you get reimbursed, because it is much more advantageous to, if art therapy can do most of the healing, then I don't need to prescribe maybe a medication. I'm not saying that people don't need medications.
Right.
I'm saying that could be a part of treatment, and they may not need a medication, or they may not need 12 sessions or whatever it is. And again, I am not saying that people don't, I'm a psychiatrist, I am not saying people don't need medications. I am saying that art therapy works because I've seen it. And it's another part of the brain that we need to use, the creative side. And it does just a lot of good healing. And so that's just an idea of the virtual world. I don't know how you wouldn't do that with equine therapy, but maybe teaching something about horses. I don't know, but that's certainly a technology, I think. And then virtual reality, how can you put a module together about art therapy that people put the headsets on and they're in some wonderful land of art. So
That's really interesting. So, you look at that and we have all this technology, but maybe it's a part where we could do some remote, and then if we had the right collection of people, community, someone might be across the country in Arizona, could be part of this overall network, and then they could learn about the different types of, I'll call them supportive activities, engagements to mental health support. And then they could go locally to one of the partners that actually has the horses in that location. And they could choose. And if they make the choice and they're not forced to go to it, maybe the attendance would be more consistent. I don't know.
Right. So in terms of attendance, we're really not having that issue anymore. We have very good problems now. We have the clients, now we don't have the funding, so that's
Right.
another whole, but I'm not going to get into that. But I'm very interested to know more about Luis's feelings too, because we are seeing more people with a variety of disabilities coming in. We actually had a woman call me, and she's a MIL spouse who's blind, and she wants to do equine assisted therapy. Okay, let's do it, bring it on. And we have to be creative. We have to be very creative because safety, physical and emotional safety, is so important. And I'm curious, Louis, about how you feel that the community, that one community that you're a part of, feels about trying new things.
The infantrymen, specifically infantrymen, and then when we're talking about therapies, alternative therapies, they're seen as maybe childish, and it's again a topic that's been brought up is the stigma. The stigma. If you tell me to paint my feelings, I'm going to say that's not my job. My job is to paint the walls with blood, not paint flowers on your paper. And it's like, well, what if we try some horse riding? It's like, I used to ride dune buggies up the, it's that extreme machoism is probably the biggest hurdle that that one is going to have to overcome with a combat wounded service member. So the best way I was able to get any information was actually word of mouth. The soldiers that I was with, the therapists that I go to, or the people that I run into in the hallway. I like to say that I've learned more from the smoke pit at Walter Reed than I did from any of the pamphlets that were hanging up on the walls, because it's just talking. So these group therapies are great, but it's hard to get me into a group therapy, but because then I'm going to have to talk about weaknesses, and I'm not weak, I'm a grunt. And so we have this wall that's this darn near impenetrable. But having peers, it was actually one of the reasons why I really looked at going into art therapy. It's why I began to go to school to be an art therapist, because my hope was that somebody like me who has been through the ringer and who has the street cred, as it will, tells you that it's like, look, this therapy might help. It's not just painting flowers and your feelings and scary pictures. There's something to it. I was hoping that my position would be able to help others. And I still do the same thing, but without the degree. But to get it out to more people, I don't know. That answer I would not know. Reaching people like me, very difficult. But once you got our trust, you got our trust.
And that's the key word, right? That's the word I was waiting for someone to bring up, is trust. And I think part of it is trusting each other, but also building trust and community outside of our silos. And so, Gail, did you want to add anything?
I have so many thoughts. I was thinking about my residency at the VA when all the guys in the hooch, I was, 27 years old, and like, how could you understand what I've been through? Also the World War II vets. How could you understand what I've been through? And it was gaining their trust. I was thinking about how to kind of intervene to a larger group of people, even a parental primer or a parenting handbook, which does not exist, right? We become parents, we don't have a real straightforward handbook. And when we look at PTSD, and the real risk of PTSD is it's derived from ACEs, or adverse childhood experiences. We know for sure that people with a higher level of ACEs are more likely to develop PTSD. So if we can help parents prevent that from happening. Also looking at heart rate variability. We know that soldiers who, prior to deployment, if their HRV was lower, they were more likely to develop PTSD when they came back. So how our nervous systems are managed prior to deployment. So how can we help parents help their kids manage their nervous systems early on, and also help parents manage their nervous system. So having a stressed out mom go for a nature walk, be around horses, do art. So I'm getting a little bit off track here, but those are some thoughts
But
going
actually
through my
not,
mind.
right? Because, the reality is we all are going to spend our time with family and friends and some time alone. But how can we create opportunities, whether they're online as a starting point or a mix of online and face-to-face, that allows the engagement to happen, and not to be talking about wellness or mindfulness, but actually doing something, whatever that might be. Everyone is a little bit, we can have metal work, foundry work for people that really like the edge, and that might excite them. And we come together and we move forward from there. But we go to this spot together and we build something together. And I think that's what Mary Lou has done with this symposium. And I'm appreciative of it because I know as an organization, we have benefited from the partnerships that we have had through your symposium every year. Do we have a minute to take one more question?
This is, sorry, thank you. This is less of a question, more of a comment, just to foot stomp what Gail just said. And I left the DoD earlier this year and was working with military families and was overseas in UCOM. And when we met with the chief of staff over at UCOM, the question I asked was, what can we be doing now to get ahead of the curveball for military families and children with the Russian threat in Ukraine so close? And I think what you just said ties into that. How to help parents start to regulate their nervous system, how to help children start to regulate their nervous system, so that as they are exposed to these these environments with increasing threats, they are better prepared to deal with it and manage it when they come out on the other side. So I really appreciated hearing that comment, and I hope someone from DoD and VA is listening so they know how to tie this into what's happening in theater.
In the same vein, recognizing the signs and symptoms in their children. So, we look at trauma now being acquired neurodivergence. It changes the brain in children especially, impedes their learning, increases their impulsivity, and so parents need to be educated about that as well. Yeah.
And I think there was one other question.
Hey there, Jen Strickland here. I've done a lot of interviews with veterans and veteran service organizations, and one of the things that I have taken away is I kind of coin a little term in my head that a lot of veterans are allergic to technology, and they just don't trust it, especially if they've experienced any kind of a life-changing injury of sorts, where they have to get used to new technology that they haven't used before, and it all goes wrong because so much technology isn't accessible. By accessible, I mean it's not made for people with disabilities. A lot of my tech brethren have failed at their jobs, but I agree very passionately with something that Louis said, which is that smoke pit. We need to meet the veterans and survivors of various traumas where they are. And so, like, if you could bring the horses into the veteran service organizations or the veterans meeting hall, VFWs and things like that. I mean, I'm not meaning specifically the horses, but once we have veterans that are joining the effort to try to meet more veterans, to help them learn how they can help themselves to services. For example, I worked on the VA.gov modernization, and the more we could get veterans that had experienced any kind of an injury working on the modernization, the better we were able to get people to take it seriously and think really, I mean, Mary Lou talked about it early on, the empathy. If you can feel what the other person is feeling, you're more likely to help them. And we all have to learn how to try to put ourselves in each other's shoes. And that's just so key. And on this one, especially with the healing arts, with all of the budget cuts that have happened in my lifetime to arts, we've lost the ability to critical think and to heal ourselves.
Right.
And arts are so critical. If we all brought art and did art here, then we could take it away with us and bring more of it to the world. So that's all I wanted to say.
Well, and I think thank you everyone for your thoughts and ideas, and I think we're all of like mind that we can achieve more together, and definitely to follow through on some of these things, and technology, and I had not thought about virtual reality. That's got my mind going crazy on some things that we could do, but also to the people on the panel that came in, and that they kind of had to trust that it was going to be okay, and I wasn't going to put them in a really bad spot. And I hope I didn't put you in any bad spots, but I do appreciate your experiences and sharing them, because when we tell the stories that we have, other people tell theirs, and we come up with better solutions. So thank you so much for being here with me today.
Thank Thanks for having us.